Hello, my name is Benga, and today we are back to the 1x1 series to talk about this plant right here, which is my Schefflera Arboricola. First things first, who is this plant for? I'd say it's for two main types of people. One would be the person who wants a relatively large plant without having to put a lot of money towards that plant. I think I got this for about £13-14, and it was not that much smaller than it is now. And the second kind of person is someone who is not perfect when it comes to looking after plants, and the main reason being because this plant is relatively forgiving. In other words, if you make some mistakes with it, it doesn't mean the whole thing's going to fall apart irreversibly. So if this is your first time seeing one of these kind of videos from me, first of all, welcome, thanks for being here. But secondly, let me go through the rough structure that I like to use when I go through these. So number one, I will talk to you about my journey with this particular plant, and I will also speak a bit on the care that I've given this particular plant that works for me. I will also talk about what it is that I like about the plant, their specific features that I want to call out, and then finally talk about any problems I've had or any mistakes I've made with this particular plant. So, by way of an introduction, this plant's full botanical name is the Schefflera Arboricola, but it's also known as the Heptaplurum arboricola. But in terms of common names, most people use umbrella tree. And I think that is mainly to do with the shape of the leaves, because it kind of looks like the different sections of an umbrella, and the way that the leaves grow, it's almost like you're opening an umbrella. I'll show you what I mean in a clip later. This particular one I have next to me is roughly... Okay, so what I'm learning about doing these videos is that I cannot estimate distances to save my life. For some reason, I said that this is 60 centimeters tall, but it's actually pretty much a meter tall, as you can see by this picture of me having it side by side with me, and I am 6 foot tall. So yeah, I'm not sure why I thought it was so small, but it is about a meter tall. Moving on. So I bought this plant maybe 5-6 months ago, I think around November last year. I got it from Sainsbury's. Shout out to people who shop at Sainsbury's, not actually me, but I was there to buy something else and I just saw it and it caught my eye. I'd known of the plant and just been aware of its existence, but I was thinking about maybe getting a variegated version of it. But I think it worked out well, because when I was in Sainsbury's, what attracted me to this is the fact that it's got a braided, you can't really see that, but it's got a braided main stem. I think it's four main stems, which are, that's not four, this is four main stems which are braided into each other, which I've only really seen that style on a Pachira aquatica money tree, which is super common. That's pretty much the main way you would find them sold. So I thought it was just interesting that it was on a Schefflera, and so I was like, let me get that. And honestly, I think it worked out for the best that I got just the plain green version, because the lighting options at home and stuff, it made more sense to have it to be green as opposed to white or variegated that would need more light to maintain the variegation. Speaking of which, let's talk about the care. So, location first. I didn't know where to put this when I first got it, mostly because I didn't really have enough space for a plant this big at the time I purchased it. But as we all know, once you bought the plant, you can make space for that plant. Amen? Amen. So I first of all put it in a room that was south facing, that had a reasonable amount of space, but it was not at all temperature controlled. And remember, I bought this in November, and I also went away in December. So you can see the problem that arose, which is that it got too cold. And I think also I didn't know what the watering kind of schedule would be. So it was, I think, just sitting, and it was wet and it was also cold for a while. I don't even know how long, but as in, yeah, it was not getting the right watering, the right temperature and stuff. So it really just didn't enjoy that. So it started dropping leaves. Literally, it got to a point where it was dropping leaves two a day, 3 a day. I was coming back and just seeing leaves on the floor. So I kind of panicked and decided to move it out of that room and to water it less. So I think I moved it to another south-facing window. However, this time it was much more temperature controlled. It was not getting anywhere near as cold, and that worked in its favor. So, but because, again, limited options, I ended up having to put it just on my desk, which, if you think about it and you see the size of this plant relative to me, I can give you an idea. Imagine this is a laptop screen roughly like this size. So there's a desk that has a laptop, an external monitor, and this whole plant. You know how you normally get desk plants that are like cute, maybe like this big? This was my desk plant, amongst others. So it was a bit ridiculous, but it needed it for those early winter months, maybe like February, March-ish. It really needed that, I think, to recover, to start to like acclimatize and just, you know, love life a little bit more, because it did not enjoy the cold temperatures at all. So now I've put it in a east-facing window where it's not too close to the window, but it has a lot of space to branch out and move and expand horizontally. The issue is in the south-facing one is that there wasn't that much space. So east is like good. It's also because it's summer now, or it's basically summer now. Much more light, and in the east-facing window, I think it's enough light, and it has a space to grow like horizontally. So I think overall, this is the best place for it right now. Side note, I think it's becoming a bit of a realization for me that even though you can give the plant, a certain plant, the best conditions possible or whatnot, that doesn't mean that that's like, it's permanent. Plants would have to stay exactly where you put them, and you have to find the optimal spot and then never change it. So I just realized, I come to that realization, and means that just I'm going to keep moving my plants around depending on what they need, because I think that just makes more sense rather than, you know, fixing it in one place. In terms of watering, this is one of those plants that's like annoyingly in between. It doesn't need to be completely like bone dry before you water it, and equally it doesn't want to be or need to be completely moist evenly all day every day. It's somewhere in between. I say annoyingly, it's annoyingly in the description, is kind of vague, but it's actually ideal in terms of actually looking after it, because it's one of those plants that you can kind of just check it and be like, okay, cool, I could water this, or I could wait a couple of days, and you don't have to worry about watering it bang on schedule or like bang at the first sign that it needs watering. So again, I think that's what makes it ideal as a houseplant, and especially for a beginner. Typically at the moment, because it's now getting warmer, I'm watering this roughly every 2 weeks, and then roughly 2 weeks. And then in the winter, I was watering it roughly once a month. But again, I've moved it around locations and stuff. But that's just to give you an idea. I have no idea what the substrate is in. That is exactly what it was in when I got it from the shop. So don't ask me about any of that. Now, finally, I can actually talk about fertilizing, because I did it. I actually fertilized my plants. Someone in the corner, I can hear you rejoicing. Hallelujah. I finally fertilized my plants. I'll talk about that at another point. But yes, this plant right here has been fertilized. Hallelujah. I did it about a month ago, maybe a bit more than a month ago, and I have seen results, which I'll talk about in a second. Normally, I like to talk about the roots in these videos, but I haven't repotted this plant before, and you can't see the roots coming out the bottom, or you can see one of them, but I don't feel confident that I know what the roots actually look like. So what I might do is actually right now, just slightly unpot the plant so we can have a look together. So this is how big it is relative to me. So it's going to be a bit tricky to try and do this with one hand also, but you can kind of see, I mean, I'm trying to do this without spilling anything. You can kind of see, let me move my head out of the frame. You can sort of see the roots there. They're quite fine. They're quite kind of a pale brown color. But they're not as fine as, you know, like a succulent roots, but they're not as thick as like an alocasia, for example. Let's see if I can. I don't want to make a mess, because like this is not a video where I'm prepared. I don't have the time to clean up after this. So let's just, oh okay, it's coming up pretty easily. Okay, that's what the roots look like. As you can see, it's actually quite root bound, which I guessed just because when I water it, I can kind of tell. But I won't be repotting this anytime soon. Partly because I haven't bothered, but also partly because no, actually that's the whole reason I can't be bothered. So, okay, I'm quite excited to talk about this because I feel like I know things because I looked it up on Wikipedia, yes. So, normally I talk about the actual like structure of the plant. So actually, let me pick it up again so you can see what I mean up close. So like I mentioned, there's 4 main stems coming out the base of the pot, and then they're braided around each other. and as you get to the top of them, you can kind of see they basically just become their own individual branches. I'll do some more close-ups of that in a second, but what I want to home in on, let's just use this as an example, is that this is what the leaf looks like. Let me switch it to this side. Is that clearer? Yeah. So this is what a leaf looks like. I'm trying to do this without putting it in front of my face, but also I want you to be able to actually see. Okay, there we go. Behind my hand, that works. So this is what a single leaf looks like. Now this whole thing is a leaf. Like all of these many items make up one leaf. So everything I'm holding in my hand right now is one leaf, and these individual kind of blades, they are known as leaflets. So this is a leaf, this is a leaflet. So this one leaf has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, I forgot where I started. I think was that 8 or 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 leaflets. Let me count in the camera. That's easier. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, nine leaflets make up this one leaf. But then there are also leaves that have as few as. Let's find an example. I think I've seen one with as few as 4 leaflets. Well, this is one of, you can't see that. Anyway, there are different leaves have different number of leaflets, and I believe as it matures or as you get towards the top of each of these individual trunks, those leaves have more leaflets as they get bigger. Of course, the actual leaflets themselves get bigger because you've got this one here compared to like this one here, which is noticeably bigger. You can see the leaflets are thicker. Like this one is thicker than my thumb versus this one, which is decidedly thinner than my thumb. I'm going to say something else scientific and smart, but I've forgotten what I read earlier. But whilst I've got it up close, let me just talk a bit more about what it actually is like as a plant. So as you can see, it's got this deep green color. I wish I knew the actual name of the plant, but if you grew up in the UK, I think you'll know what I mean. There's a plant that's really common that's used for like hedges. Okay, so I was really struggling with my words in this section, but what I'm trying to say is this plant reminds me of a plant that is very common in the UK, which when I looked it up, I eventually found it. It is called the cherry laurel, otherwise known as the Prunus laurocerasus. This is often used for hedges and privacy plants at the edge of properties in landscaping. And the reason I recognize it is because there was lots of this in our playground at my primary school, and it's also a pretty common feature just in general. So I think if you're in the UK, you would recognize this, especially if you know what it looks like when it's flowering. So I'll put a picture in where you can see where it's flowering. And if you're in the UK right now, you probably have seen these in the last month because that's when they tend to flower. This really reminds me of that in that the leaves are on top are quite waxy and shiny versus the undersides, which are a bit more pale and more matte in color, in finish, not color, in finish. Like I said, you have separate stalks that have individual leaves which have leaflets on them. As you can see, the base of the main stalks kind of go sort of more woody brown sort of texture and color, but the top of them is much more green, especially lighter in color. Let me put this down for a second. Now, let's talk about how it's I've made a mess with soil on the floor. The way it grows. So I was very curious because I bought this, and I think about 2-3 months in, I was like, I like the look of this, but how is this actually going to grow? With a lot of my plants previously, it's been quite clear because they have a new leaf on the way, or it's very clear because the leaves all come from the center and they kind of go outwards like that. But with this one, I was actually trying to figure out where actually these new leaves are going to just magically appear from. But I had a suspicion, and that suspicion was confirmed. I posted about this on Instagram, I think, where I documented the various stages of this, but I noticed I was just looking at it in general, and I was thinking, if I were a new leaf, it'd probably come out around there. Then I came back like a week or so later, and I noticed like a very, very small bump, and I was like, interesting, I wonder if that's where the leaf's gonna come from. And slowly but surely, that is exactly what happened. New leaves started popping up all over the shop. It was actually very exciting because it was just so much activity in different sections of the plant where they all decided to just wake up around the same time. I want to say this was around February, March-ish kind of time. And then I also fertilized around that time, and I don't know, I haven't done a control, so I can't say for sure how much that was boosted by the fertilizer in terms of the speed of the growth and the size of the growths, but I'm not mad because I got results. So for example, this, oh, you can't really see that. Let me pick a different one. Okay. So, I wonder if this will actually be visible in the camera. No, that's above, that's out of view. Okay, so I'm having to hold this between my legs so you can get the shot. Please appreciate me. So this leaf is new and you can see it on its way out. This is why I think it's called umbrella plant, because when it's in this stage, it looks like a baby umbrella that is just like being opened up. So they start much more than this. This is probably like like a week or so since it started coming out of the main stem. And then where's an example? So this is an example of a leaf that's, this one here is an example of a leaf that's grown in the last like month or so from nothing. So the newest leaves are coming in pretty big, which is exciting. Okay, this is very awkward, so let me put it down. I don't remember how it was. So since I got it, it's not, well, since I got it and got the care right, it's not dropped on any leaves. So I don't think it's one of those plants where as a new leaf comes in, an old one drops off. As you can see, the leaves and the leaflets and whatnot are relatively small. And especially, I showed you the roots, it's got a lot of roots going on, so I don't think it has a reason to start sacrificing leaves. But the leaves also aren't huge, so yeah. Point is, it's maintained all its leaves and put on new ones, which we love to see. Generally speaking, it doesn't necessarily lean towards the light, but the new leaves do grow towards the light. So if you want it to be very even, you will need to rotate it. But I noticed that it's not one of those ones where if it grows to the light, it then stays that way, if that makes sense. So the individual leaves do kind of turn to the light, so you can kind of correct it. When I first got it, actually, you could very clearly see which is the front and the back of the plant because of the way it was in the shop. And the entire back, you could see that all of the leaves at the back had turned to face and peer like through the gaps of the plant. So it's one that you can kind of correct fairly easily without any kind of lasting impact from the fact that it faced one direction. So that was probably good for someone who probably wanted to hear that, so there you go. But in general, yeah, it grows outwards as well as upwards, not really downwards, but not in one direction. Things are going on in all different directions, which is what makes it fun to me. I've not got any experience propagating this plant, but I hear on the streets that you can water and soil propagate it like you can with most plants. I'd imagine that it would have a very different look because you'd be starting with a single stem compared to this, which is clearly like, the reason it's so bushy at the top is because it's got 4 different stems coming up, which have kind of come together to make this kind of ball at the top, which has all the leaves in it. Whereas if you had one, it would very much be like one with like leaf, 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 leaf. So it look a bit naked, a bit bare. So I think that's probably why they do this, to make it look a bit more full. But it could be the vibe for you, I don't know. So in terms of mistakes and problems I've had with this plant, I would say, I think I touched on it before, and that's really the only major one, which is the only one which was fairly major, which is that I left it in the cold for too long, and it really showed me that it was not happy. I didn't know what it was, but the solutions that I tried worked, so that's how I worked out what the issue was. It was dropping leaves roughly 1 to 2, maybe 3 a day, and also some of them were yellowing. And it wasn't, like I was saying before, it wasn't irreversible because the look of the start of the plant is dependent on having lots of small leaves. So losing a few doesn't necessarily change the overall look of the plant too much. Compared to a snake plant where my snake plant had a lot of leaves at first, but then now I've had issues with it. And when you lose a single leaf in a snake plant, it's done. You can't really regain it. All you can do is chop it off, maybe propagate the top of it, but once it starts rotting from the base, it's done. But if you lose a lot of those leaves or a significant number, then the whole shape of the plant or the style of the plant looks quite different. I'll post some pictures before and after over here so you can see what I mean. I don't know why I said that so confidently, because I absolutely do not have a before and after picture of my snake plant. So anyway. Whereas with this one, losing a single leaf, losing 5 leaves even a day didn't actually necessarily change the shape of the plant. I would have needed to lose like 20 for it to really start to look drastically different. So again, that's why I say that this is a good plant for beginners and a good one that is relatively forgiving, because you don't lose out too much if you go wrong with it. You really need to like chop it in half for it to be completely unsalvageable. And that doesn't even mean unsalvageable, because it will probably grow back. But anyway. So if you have this plant, what would I recommend? I think I'd recommend that you put it somewhere that is going to get a decent amount of light, but don't obsess over it needing like direct sunlight 24 hours a day or anything like that. As long as it gets a moderate amount of light, I think it'll be fine. Think like a pothos, for example, the amount of light that I'll be happy with, you're probably fine. You probably want to go above like a ZZ plant or something, but a pothos, they're similar in terms of what it needs in terms of light, and I just say that based on where I've had it compared to my pothos, and they both seem pretty happy. I'd water it pretty like regularly. Don't like let it dry out, and like it's not succulent, but also don't freak out if you don't have a chance to water it like bang on time and leave it an extra week. I think it will be okay. In terms of locations, I'd probably put this somewhere that you want to feel vertical space. So maybe if you have 2 couches and you have a little table between, this would look nice maybe on a table between the 2 couches, because it takes up this space that otherwise is just not used. It's kind of just air. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend this for like a windowsill plant, because I had it on my windowsill and I tell you it took up the whole windowsill, and every time I needed to open the window I had to get around the plant. So I would not recommend that. In terms of my future plans with this plant, I don't really have any. I may try to propagate it just because I can, or I can try, but also I kind of like it as it is, so I don't think I have any particular plans. Depends how unwieldy it gets. What I would have liked was if I had maintained the braid, because I can see now that the braid is done. It's braided up to like this point, and then the rest of the stalks are just going in different random directions. So the shape's going to change over time. It may end up looking a little bit sparse. So I would have liked to maintain the braid, but it was already kind of a lost cause when I got it, because I'll show them close-ups. You can see that the main stalks were cut in certain places, I guess to make it branch out in different directions and stuff. So it wasn't something that was really within my control, but it would have been nice if it was continuously braided all the way up, but what can you do? That's all I really have to say about this plant. I hope it was useful, and I hope it was informative for somebody out there. Please let me know in the comments a plant that you are particularly interested in right now. Maybe a plant that you'd recommend that I try out or look into, because I think that's mainly one of the main benefits of these kinds of videos, I think, is that you learn about another plant that maybe you don't have experience with, and you can work out whether or not that plant is the right one for you based on someone else's experience. So talk to me about your plants. And finally, before we go, as always, let's get into some music. I think I have skipped music for the last video, mode 2, because the time I was filming, I was going through some things, so I just wanted to be over with it. But don't worry, I'm back. I'm here to bless you, to bless your ears. So the music this week, I was really debating. I was right on the line of talking about 2 different songs / artists, but I'm just gonna let the spirit lead me. And in this moment, what I'm being told to say is the song Covering by Labrinth. So Labrinth released an album, I think 2 weeks ago, and it's called Ends and Begins. And if you have listened to either of the Euphoria soundtracks, you know what to expect when it comes to this album. It's pretty much like if you took like the core sonic themes of those soundtracks and put it into an album that is meant to be listened to as a standalone album separate from a soundtrack. That's kind of the vibe it gets. So think about songs where it's just Labrinth on them. So songs like I'm Tired, the original version, or what was that song that was from the season 1 soundtrack? All For Us, the Labrinth version, or songs like Forever. Okay, that's a great example. Forever. Like where Labrinth is the vocalist and he's just doing his thing on a production level and on a vocal level. That's a good insight to what this album is like. Production wise, I just find it so interesting. Like Labrinth is an example of someone who's created their own sound, but not made every song sound the same. Other examples of that might be someone like Nada, who has a clear sound, but not every song sounds the same. If you're catching me, someone at home is getting what I'm saying, even though I'm not explaining it all that well. I'm just saying the same words, but I see you and you see me. I really enjoy his sound because it works really well, both as kind of a depressing, melancholy, sort of wallowing, sadness kind of vibe, but it also works for like really bold, brash, heavy tracks as well. So if you think about songs like, I think the song's called Ice. Oh no, I'm thinking of two different songs. Okay, Skeletons in the Closet from the season 2 soundtrack. That one is like very bold, there's a lot of big instrumentation, but also on the complete flip side, think about a song like I'm Tired. That song is just, it's heart-wrenching. So I love his versatility as an artist, and I would like to apologize on behalf of my like 12 or 13-year-old self that dismissed this man way back when he was releasing songs like Earthquake, because I think I didn't see the vision. Okay, someone else saw it and it wasn't me. But now I'm here, I've opened my eyes and I'm ready. I'm sad. I'm ready for the music. So I'm really glad that he decided to release this as like a standalone album project that's not tied to Euphoria, because I think some people really dismiss the Euphoria soundtrack because it's Euphoria, but this album in and of itself shows you what this man is working with, and it's just talent. And I love that for him, and I love it for me too. So listen to Labrinth's album Ends and Begins, and in particular the songs I mentioned. My favorite song is Covering, but also really likes like Ends and Begins is a great song. My initial the first favorite song I had for the first couple of days was 100 Miles an Hour. But honestly, whole thing, bangers. We have reached the end of this video, finally. I'm not saying that because I want to go, but finally in that I feel like I've been talking for a while. I hope you have a good day, or whatever I say at the end of these videos I've completely forgotten. If you want to watch any other of the 1x1 videos, I will put them in a playlist and I'll put that up here. But if you want to watch a completely unrelated video, you hate this video and you want to see something completely different, I will put a video talking about a plant swap that I went to right here. And with that, I'm off.